book of Daniel contains 12 chapters. In the 1st century before Christ, a 13th chapter was added, containing the story of Susarma. She was the beautiful wife of a leading Jew in Babylon, falsely accused of infidelity. Because of Daniel's wisdom, she was rescued. He asked each of her accusers separately under which tree in the garden they found Susanna with her lover. When they gave different answers, they were put to death, and Susanna was saved. Belle and the Dragon. This book was added about the same time and was called chapter 14 of Daniel. Its main purpose to show the folly of idolatry. It really contains 2 stories. In the first, King Cyrus asked Daniel why he did not worship Belle, since that deity showed his greatness by daily consuming much flour and oil and many sheep. This is a dragon we're talking about. Daniel scattered ashes on the floor of the temple where food had been placed that evening, and in the morning Daniel showed the king the footprints of the priests and their families who had entered secretly under the table and consumed the food. So they're the ones really eating the food. The priests were slain and the temple destroyed. The story of the dragon is just as obviously legendary in character. Along with Tobit, Judas, and Susanna, these stories may be classified as Jewish fiction. They have little religious value. The Song of the 3 Hebrew Children follows Daniel in the Septuagint and in the Vulgate scriptures, or books, scriptures. It describes what happened to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These are the 3 friends, of course, of Daniel that were actually real people listed in the book of Daniel, but this is supposedly their story. And it's the story when they go inside the fiery furnace. Borrowing heavily from Psalm 148 is antiphonal, like Psalm 136. The refrain, "Sing praise to him and greatly exalt him forever," appears 32 times, so it's like a song. The prayer of Manasseh was composed in Maccabean times in the 2nd century BC or later as a supposed prayer of Manasseh, the wicked king of Judah. It is obviously suggested by the statement in 2nd Chronicles 33:19, his prayer and how God was moved by his entreaty. All these are written in the records of the seers. So this prayer he wrote to God. He was not a very good guy, but he writes this prayer. Is not found otherwise in the Bible anywhere, so it's likely legendary. So 1st Maccabees is perhaps the most valuable book in the Apocrypha. It describes the exploits of the 3 Maccabean brothers, Judas, Jonathan, and Simon, during the Jewish revolt against the Seleucid Empire in 165 to 164 BC. Along with Josephus, it is our most important source for this crucial, exciting period in Jewish history. 2nd Maccabees, same time period, is not a sequel to 1st Maccabees. It is a parallel account, treating only the victories of Judas. Maccabees, it is generally thought to be more of legendary than 1st Maccabees. So, historical testimony of their exclusion. So, why are they not included? So, Geisler and Nix, once again, the theology scholars, give 10 testimonies of antiquity that argue against the recognition of the Apocrypha, or apocryphal books, however you want to say it. 1. Philo, Alexandrian Jewish philosopher that lived between 20 years BC and 40 AD, quoted the Old Testament prolifically and even recognized the threefold classification that we talked about before, but he never quoted from the Apocrypha as inspired. 2. Josephus, famous historian, right? AD 30 to 100. Jewish historian explicitly excludes the Apocrypha, numbering the books of the Old Testament as 22. Neither does he quote the apocryphal books in Scripture. 3. Jesus and the New Testament writers never once quote the Apocrypha, although there are hundreds of quotes and references to almost all of the canonical books of the Old Testament. The Jewish scholars of Jamna, talked about the Council of Jamna, did not recognize the Apocrypha. No canon or council of the Christian church recognized the Apocrypha as inspired for nearly 4 centuries. So something that was just, they tried to sneak in there much later. And remember, farther away you get from the events that happened, the less reliable the source is, the writings are. Many of the great fathers at the early church spoke out against the Apocrypha. For example, Origen, Cyril of Jerusalem, and Athanasius. Jerome, from AD 340 to 420, the great scholar and translator of the Latin Vulgate, rejected the Apocrypha as part of the canon rejected the Apocrypha as part of the canon. Jerome said that the church reads them, for example, of life and instruction in manners. So it's like a book on manners, but does not apply them to establish any kind of doctrine. He disputed with Augustine across the Mediterranean at this point. At first, Jerome refused even to translate the apocryphal books into Latin, but later he made a hurried translation of a few of them. After his death and over his dead body, the apocryphal books were brought into his Latin Vulgate directly from the old Latin version. So he didn't want him in there, but they brought him in there anyway after he was dead. Number 8, many Roman Catholic scholars through the Reformation period rejected the Apocrypha. Number 9, of course, Luther and the Reformers rejected the canonicity of the Apocrypha. That's one of the main things to remember. 10, not until AD 1546, in a polemical action at the Counter-Reformation Council of Trent. So this is the big council that we talk about in detail, the Council of Trent, where the Catholic Church got together to, because they were worried about the Reformation. This council took place in 1545 to 1563. At that point, the apocryphal books received full canonical status. If you open up a Catholic Bible, you'll see those books in there. They were put in there by the Roman Catholic Church. So in conclusion, after examining different issues regarding the reliability of the Bible, we agree with the New Testament scholar Craig L. Bloomberg's conclusion. And he says this: ironically, what has become best known in our culture over the past generation, both inside and outside of Christian circles, is the flurry of skepticism that certain narrow segments of scholarship and pseudo-scholarship have unleashed. So we've got these scholars that are just going crazy and saying all kinds of things. This is ironic because in each instance, the less quoted majority of scholars have increasingly come to recognize that the evidence is actually stronger for the trustworthiness of the scriptures in each of these areas, as long as that trustworthiness is appropriately defined by the standards of antiquity. Well, hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. I am so excited that you stuck to it to the end, and I appreciate that. And please do smack that subscribe button. Check out the next video.